Hey, what's going on YouTube? I just got through watching that this show called 9/11 Conspiracies, Fact and Fiction that came on the History Channel. I watch a lot of the History Channel, and I remember that day very well. I remember, and I know everyone remembers where they were and what they were doing when they first got wind of what was going on. I remember I was up, but I hadn't got out of bed yet, and I was sitting on the edge of my bed watching the news when they first started broadcasting that a plane hit the World Trade Center, whichever tower it was, and I remember thinking to myself, and this is before the second one hit, that this is no accident. This is definitely not an accident, and that was confirmed when the second one hit. And when that second plane hit, there was no talk of a commercial airliner plane, passenger plane. You know one thing that kind of debunked that for me at the beginning. Now when you have to take a plane to a destination, if you're not afraid of heights and you want to see the beauty of the sky, you want a window seat. One thing about those planes, that plane, it didn't have a line of windows going down the side of it. So that told me that it was either a cargo plane or some other type of plane, but not a commercial airliner. Now, while I was watching, well, my heart goes out to all those people that lost their lives, and those who lost their loved ones in those World Trade Center that unfortunate day. Now, the show basically had conspiracy theorists touching on their questions, and then so-called experts with their explanations and trying to debunk what the so-called conspiracy theorists were saying. They basically touched on the regular stuff like that were obvious, like why was there no plane debris at the Pentagon? Not even a plane tail. Like, one thing about plane crashes, there will at least be the tail there. If it's not, you would still recognize it as the plane's tail, because the rest of the plane acts as a cushion that softens the impact, so that the tail still remains somewhat. But there was none of that. And the hole in the Pentagon was not consistent of that would have been hit by a large plane such as the Boeing 757. And also, one question that was raised by me: why have we not heard from any of the families that lost their loved ones on those planes that hit the World Trade Center, and also that had hit the Pentagon? Why haven't they were commercial airliners, hijacked planes? Why they were taken over by terrorists with box cutters of all things? Why have we not heard from any of the families other than maybe like 2 or 3 from Flight 93? Why? And Flight 93, like, they've been touched on this in the show. But this is not me. Like, this is my first time hearing about this, that the cell phone calls that were made to those family members was fake, like in real time. And they had, and it's possible because they do have technology where you can change your voice to sound like a certain person or whatever. And there was one thing that stood out as far as the call that they made, a point they made, where I was like, yeah, that is kind of odd. When the dude called his mother, he said, "Hey mom, this is Mark such and such," or such and such is his last name. Like, who calls their mother and announce themselves by their full name? I've never done that. I don't think I've ever said my full name to my mother in any sense, because my mother already knows who I am. When I call, she knows my voice. And I asked my mother, "Hey mom, what would you say if I called and said, 'Hey mom, this is I said my full name?'" She said, "I don't think that's odd." But anyway, you make the call on that. Also, they touched on the buildings being a controlled collapse, which they did look like the typical demolition controlled collapse. But the experts say they collapsed due to the weight of the building coming down. And they brought up the point, you know, if you look at the video, you'll see like puffs of smoke which look like explosions 30 to 40 stories below the actual collapse of the building. Now, and the experts say it was just air being forced out of the windows, which we saw that, but it was that was directly up under the collapse. What they were talking about was way far, was far down. Puff, boom, 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 boom. You know, which they say that it was explosive, carefully placed explosives. They also say that the building was shut down shortly prior to all of this. I mean, I don't know. You know, they say everybody was not, no one was allowed in except for like these people in these suits. I mean, not kind of like engineer suits or whatever. But I don't know. Also, this is a big question to me that I bring up, that I have not heard no one bring up. And this is involving the terrorists, the so-called terrorists, Al-Qaeda, if you may. You know, one thing about terrorists, and you don't have to study terrorists to know this. Terrorists admit to what they do because they were trying to make a point behind it, or they were trying to make some kind of demands. So they admit to what they just did. Why don't we directly know who's responsible for it? Because you ever heard, when you can't take your negotiations to the negotiating table, you take your negotiations to the street. If you have to take innocent lives to get your point across, then so be it. That's what terrorists do. And what disturbs me is that no terrorist group has admitted to it. So that tells me that there was no terrorist group. I mean, but that's just me. And in my closing statements, I don't know who's directly behind 9/11. So I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, such and such directly was behind it. I think if it was an inside job, I think the inside had something to do with it. They're in there somewhere. I believe that it's an inside and outside job. There are powers because let's be honest, let's be direct. The U.S. does not work alone. The U.S. works with outside. No, I'm not talking about the American people. I'm talking about the government, the American government, the officials. They work with others outside. So, and maybe this was just a plot, you know, a plan just to go into Iraq. You know what I mean? To go after the oil. We all know that. But like I said, I'm not going to say who directly is behind it. But the truth will come out. Just like the truth came out about the moon landing. We never landed on the moon. That was just something to throw Russia off during that space race to the moon. But anyway, it's just sad that so many innocent lives had to be taken that day. Anyway, the truth will come out. Peace out, YouTube.